So guys, what's going on? Hope you guys are well. Hope you guys are staying safe. Guys, I want to talk about what Danny Garcia said about Keith Thurman and Errol Spence. Danny Garcia said that Errol Spence is 3 times stronger than Keith Thurman. Now, what did he mean by that? Did he mean that he was physically stronger? Did he mean that he punched harder? Did he mean he was just a better fighter? Errol Spence, is he a bigger puncher than Keith Thurman? I don't think there would be a lot in it, you know. I think Keith Thurman can crack. I actually think when he said 3 times stronger, I actually think physical strength. I think Errol Spence is physically very strong. I think, especially when he gets up close, I think he has a presence. I think he whips those body shots in. I think he has a strong presence. And I think Errol Spence is probably probably the more complete fighter. However, I think Keith Thurman, I think Keith Thurman is probably the better mover. I think Keith Thurman's probably got the better feet. He moves around better. He's probably got better feet, but Errol Spence, in my opinion, is the more complete fighter. I actually would love to see that fight between Keith Thurman and Errol Spence. I know a lot of people think that Errol Spence will wash Keith Thurman, especially now, and I do somewhat agree to that. I just think that Errol Spence has fought a lot of the top welterweight, Porter, Danny Garcia. You know, Mikey was obviously a smaller guy. He's looking to fight Crawford. I think Keith Thurman would be one that I think he should look to complete the set by fighting all of those old-timers. They're kind of on the way out. You know, Porter, I know he's still fresh, still, you know, a good world-class fighter. But nevertheless, you know, they're on the back end of their career now. You know, Porter and guys like that. Although they're still world-class fighters, for me, Porter's at the back end of his career. And Thurman's definitely at the back end of his career. Danny Garcia, again, is at the back end of his career. You know, I wouldn't say that they're in their prime. They're still relevant and top guys, you know, world-class fighters. They're not completely washed, like, past their best, like you probably say with Kell Brook and Amir Khan, for example. They're not completely past their best, right? But they're still on the other side of their career. Spence, however, is in his physical prime. And I do think that Errol Spence, out of all the guys that, you know, the guys that Danny Garcia has lost to, Errol Spence, the reason why Danny Garcia probably has a lot more respect for Errol Spence is because Errol Spence completely outclassed Danny Garcia. Completely outclassed. And there's been guys that have shown that Danny Garcia can be outboxed, but they weren't able to complete the job or make it conclusive. Like Amir Khan, when he fought Danny Garcia, he was outboxing Danny Garcia quite thoroughly, quite emphatically. However, he took Danny Garcia lightly and he got caught with the left hook and he ended up getting stopped. Lamont Peterson also outboxed Danny Garcia. But Lamont Peterson wasn't able to do it decisively enough where it was a close fight and Danny Garcia got the decision. Keith Thurman also, although he won the fight, Sean Porter, these guys beat Danny Garcia. They had success in the fight. However, they weren't able to dominate Danny Garcia. There was a close fight that could have gone either way with Thurman and Porter. I actually thought Danny Garcia beat Porter. So those were close fights that could have gone either way. So Danny Garcia's never in his career been dominated. The only time I saw him being dominated was against Khan. I think Khan was absolutely obliterating him, like battering him. But Khan got knocked out. He got hit with a left hook and went down. But prior to that, Garcia was getting touched up proper in that fight. But Garcia landed a huge left hook, knocked Amir Khan down and went on to win the fight by TKO. But the other fights that I've seen, Danny Garcia has been very competitive in. Even though I thought he lost against Lamont Peterson. I thought Peterson probably outpointed him. However, he wasn't able to dominate Danny Garcia. Danny Garcia always had moments in the fight where he would win rounds and the fight would be close. Because Danny Garcia was a very good fighter. That's why the fights were close. Even though I know a lot of people thought he had slow feet and he had a lot of weaknesses, Danny Garcia was a very good fighter. That's why against these top fighters, the fights were close, like Porter, like Keith Thurman, you know, Lamont Peterson, all these guys that he fought. the fights were close. Because Danny Garcia, Danny Garcia is not a guy that's going to school anyone. Danny Garcia was the type of guy where he would be in tough fights with everybody. Like even Lucas Matisse was the one where after the Amir Khan fight, and he looked, that was a close fight. Because Danny Garcia is not that slick type of boxer that, is going to win fights. He's kind of a boxer that has to take a few to let a few of his own off. He was that type of fighter, but he had a granite chin. Danny Garcia had a granite chin. And like I said, I think he had certain decisions like Herrera, Peterson that went in his favor. And he had certain decisions like, Porter that probably went against him. The Thurman, I thought he lost that one. But Errol Spence is the only guy out of the 3 losses that Danny Garcia's got that's been able to dominate him. Or even the fights that he won close. Errol Spence is the only guy that was able to dominate Danny Garcia. He was held it together. Maybe Errol Spence was in a great position because Danny Garcia was a lot older. He was a little bit past his, I would say, he was still a world-class fighter, but he was not his best, so to speak. However, Errol Spence also had seen a lot of footage of Danny Garcia. Like, Errol Spence had fought him last, so Errol Spence has seen how all of his careers played. They can devise a great strategy and a great game plan. They knew what Danny Garcia's strengths were. They knew what Danny Garcia's weaknesses were. So they were prepared accordingly. And this was the first time where I saw Angel actually accept that he lost the fight. He lost the fight, and it was quite clear. And that was good to see. Because I know a lot of people always criticize Angel, but that was good to see that his dad actually said, you know what, he didn't do enough. He didn't throw enough punches. And he goes, if he did, and basically, I personally think that Errol Spence was very strong for Garcia, and he hit him with shots, and he was making Danny Garcia miss, right? And he was making him pay. And that's why I think Danny Garcia felt the power. I think Danny Garcia felt Errol Spence's power, and he didn't want to engage as much. And what I mean by that is that he felt the power and he didn't want to go and just throw recklessly, because his dad was saying, you need to engage, you need to throw more punches. But I think it's a lot easier when you're on the outside than it is on the inside, because I think Danny Garcia felt Errol Spence's power up close and just his punches in general. And I don't think he was willing. He probably thought, he could get dropped or hurt or maybe stopped, because he wasn't engaging as much. He wasn't letting his hands go as much. And that's probably because of Errol Spence's physical strength, his punching power, because Danny Garcia has been in there with Keith Thurman and Errol Spence. I don't think that Errol Spence came close to knocking Danny Garcia down or out. However, I do think Keith Thurman caught Danny Garcia hard in that first round and almost put him down. Danny Garcia's got a granite chin, and that's why he was able to suck it up and take it. But I think that's the closest I've seen to see Danny Garcia rocked and almost dropped. The Thurman first round where Thurman caught him with that right hand. That was a serious punch. That was a serious right hand. And I was shocked that he took it. And, he recovered so quickly. And that's what made me think that this guy's tough as nails. Danny Garcia's got a granite chin. Unbelievable chin. But coming back to Errol Spence and Thurman, it's definitely a fight I would like to see. I think Errol Spence would beat Thurman. And I even think that Errol Spence would beat Thurman in his prime. Even if Thurman was at his best, I think I would favour Errol Spence. But it's a fight that I would still like to see. And it's a fight that hopefully Spence would take. And hopefully Spence, fights a Thurman, because I still think they would generate a lot of interest. And I think they've got history, those two. And I think it would be a great fight. And I actually think the build-up and everything would be good, because I actually think both those guys kind of have history with one another. And I think Keith Thurman generally is good at hyping up, promoting fights, and I think the back and forth will be really good, and it'll be exciting for fans. So yeah, I definitely want to see that fight. It'd be, again, a shame if that fight doesn't happen, because I feel like it was a fight that should have happened a couple of years ago. And Keith Thurman, obviously, for me, was looking at Errol Spence and thinking, I don't need him right now. When Keith Thurman was a unified champion, after he fought Danny Garcia, I think Keith Thurman obviously went on his hiatus and got injured. And that Keith Thurman was a top welterweight for a very short space of time. His career at the top was very short-lived. Very short-lived. And he's probably thinking looking for a comeback to the top. But it's funny, Keith Thurman's career, because I think after the Danny Garcia fight, I think he got injured and he never was able to recover from that. Then he fought Lopez and didn't look great, and then got beat by Pacquiao. And now he's been very inactive. He hasn't fought since Pacquiao. He's been very, very inactive. Very, very inactive. So it's hard to see Keith Thurman get back to the top. I think, and that's what I mean by these guys like Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman's career at the top was short-lived at world-class level. And a lot of these guys, you know, Porter's still in around world-class level, you know, but, you know, it's going to be, you're looking at it and thinking he's going to be hard for him to become a champion again, you know, unless, you know, these guys move up. So a lot of these guys, championship, although Porter's been around for a very long time and he's been competing at world-class level for a while, someone like Errol Spence, you can see, like, he won the world title against Kell Brook in 2017, was it? And he's been champion since, and you think he's going to be champion for for years to come, and that's a great champion, a guy that's not just there short-lived, he's there for a very long time, and Keith Thurman wasn't able to do that. Now, call that maybe injuries, call that... I actually think Keith Thurman would have got beat, because I think Keith Thurman was vulnerable. I do. I think Keith Thurman was vulnerable to, you know, we saw with body shots. And not just that, I think there was holes in his game that someone like Errol Spence or maybe Crawford could have beat. But I actually think that Keith Thurman, the one that fought Danny Garcia, the one that fought Sean Porter, would give those guys problems. I'm not saying he would win, but he'd definitely give those guys problems, because that Keith Thurman was a problem for anybody. Keith Thurman was a very, very good fighter. It just, like I said, his stay at the top was very short-lived. That period that we got to see a Keith Thurman that was firing all cylinders, it wasn't very long. It wasn't very long. And now you have to say that he's not the fighter he was, just because he's been so inactive. He's been so inactive, and he lost his last fight. So hopefully, hopefully Keith Thurman can have a good win and then maybe have a fight with someone like Errol Spence. It's a fight that I would love to see. I would love to see, because it seems to me that Keith Thurman, for me, is still a player. I would still like to see him in some great fights. And like I said, I think that if Keith Thurman at his best shows up, I think him and Spence would be a very interesting fight. But is Keith Thurman the best version ever going to show up again? You know, because usually when a fighter gets injured and starts becoming inactive, let's not forget, Keith Thurman had 2 years out after the Danny Garcia fight, right? So the Danny Garcia fight, when was that? In 2017? 16? I can't remember when it was. Keith Thurman, after the Danny Garcia fights, had 2 fights in what, almost 4 years? 4 years, he's had what, 2 fights? I think that tells you all you need to know. I'm pretty sure he fought Danny Garcia in 2017, or 16, at the end of 2016 or 17, right? So that's almost 3-4 years. 4 years. He's had 2 fights. You know, and that's very inactive for a world-class fighter. Very, very inactive. And there's no news about him fighting anytime soon. What's to say he's going to fight this year? There's no news about him fighting. So, yeah, hopefully Keith Thurman can get back, you know, to world-class level where he could compete with Spence and Crawford. I do think it's going to be hard for him to get to that kind of level where he's going to be able to put himself back in position where, or get back to that level where he's able to beat those guys. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough because when you fall off like that and you're inactive, it's very hard to get back. Very few people, after being that inactive, after suffering injuries and stuff, are able to come back and get right back to the top and beat pound for pound guys. Very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. But who knows? Maybe Keith Thurman can be an exception, and maybe Keith Thurman can come out and do it, you know. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below about Danny Garcia saying that Errol Spence is 3 times stronger than Keith Thurman. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.